Two happy women bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorka.
President Trump's agenda more popular than ever with Americans, but that doesn't mean that the leftists aren't still trying to cancel and silence Trump supporters. And here, joining us today, Katie Gorka on the Happy Women Podcast, is someone who has been through all of that. Thanks for being with us. And Katie, you may not have known this story, but I have done a little research on our guest today, who is a former GOP national spokeswoman. She apparently has an incredible history, a figure skater, I'm hearing, like Olympic style figure skater, also a musician, and she is a model. In addition to being a former GOP spokesperson, you can give her a follow at Elizabeth Pipko. Elizabeth Pipko is here. Elizabeth, thanks so much for joining us on the Happy Women Podcast.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for that intro. That was very nice.
Well, you're amazing. Like, overachiever much? We're going to have to talk about your story in a bit. But before we jump into some of the issues, one of the things I just learned is that you were literally canceled from having a pretty thriving modeling career, all because you started doing some work for the Republican Party and were a supporter of the president. Take us through your story. That's incredible.
Sure, yeah. In 2016, I volunteered with my younger brother for the Trump campaign. Within a few weeks, I was working on the campaign with my brother. We were two of the youngest staffers, I think, that we had on that campaign. But at the same time, I was modeling. I was in school. So I kind of hid the Trump campaign work. I didn't think it was necessary to share that part because I knew the reaction I was going to get. And B, honestly, I had gone through a really rough patch for a few years in my life. You mentioned the figure skating. I had gotten very injured and kind of didn't know what my life was going to look like because I ended up losing my figure skating career and that dream of mine. So the campaign kind of came out of nowhere. And it was like my little therapy almost that I had got to do every single day, being a part of something bigger than myself, something that I didn't even realize was going to obviously end in a victory that fall, but also take me on this journey that I've been on the last 8 years since. So for me, I just didn't want to share that with too many people, especially in the modeling world, considering I knew exactly what was going to happen when they found out. So after we won, I actually did not continue on in politics. I decided to graduate from college, did some more modeling stuff. I actually met the love of my life on that campaign. We got married. And I just kind of was living a private, normal life. And then I got married in Mar-a-Lago. Not enough people know that that only happened because the Trump family gave us Mar-a-Lago to get married in as a gift because we met on the campaign. And so after my wedding, I was told by a few media outlets that they were running a story on my wedding. It could have been because of Mar-a-Lago. It could have been because of the modeling story. Could have been because we had some really cute Make Marriage Great Again red hats that we all wore. I don't know why they wanted to do the story, but they did. So I kind of decided I had to share my story because someone was going to figure it all out anyway at that point. So I went to a different outlet. I sat down with them. I told them my full story, that while I was at one of the biggest modeling agencies in the world in New York City, I was also working full-time on the 2016 Trump campaign. And my story came out. And as I already anticipated, every single person, not just in the modeling world, but in my personal life as well, had blocked my number or dropped me as a client or as a friend or whatever else was going on. And I had to maneuver my way into politics. I ended up getting to go in and out, actually, I think either because of my own bravery or because Donald Trump literally changed the world. I ended up going back to modeling eventually. I was on the cover of some really big magazines. But then I gave that up a second time in 2024 when I was asked to serve as the national spokesperson for the Republican Party. So I did go in and out a bit and it all worked out. But originally, yes, I was very much canceled and it was very, very scary considering my parents escaped, communism, escaped the Soviet Union to come here so that I would never have to be too scared to tell people how I was voting or what views I held. So it was really, really strange and scary knowing that that's exactly what was happening to me.
What a story. We have found just so many times it's exactly the people who have experienced communism that are the most adamant supporters of Donald Trump because they know what these leftist policies are going to lead to. So, okay, I just have to ask you more about that because I don't share the same story, but I had my awakening because I lived in post-communist Hungary for 12 years, and it made such a difference in terms of opening my eyes to what this country is really about and what communism is really about. So I'd love to, if you don't mind, just take us back a little bit. So how did you end up working at the Trump campaign. Where does that story start? Were you born in Ukraine? Is that right?
No, I was born in the United States.
Okay.
Very lucky.
But your
yes.
parents were Ukrainian. Is that right?
My mom was from Russia. My dad was born in Estonia. And then my grandparents were either from Russia, Ukraine, or Belarus. So kind of a mix of Soviet Union. Russian was my first language. I was raised by my grandparents. And when you say, where does your story start? I think that's where it started, truly. I did not grow up in a political family at all. I didn't really even know how my parents were voting. I found out later on in life that they actually voted both ways, whether it was for Bill Clinton, one election, George Bush the next. They were just not political, and they raised me the same way, but they raised me to be absolutely obsessed with our country, which I very much am. Everyone who knows me knows that I cannot get through the national anthem without crying. I have an American flag in every room of my house. It's who I am, but it's who I am because of my parents' story and my grandparents' story, because every waking moment that my grandfather had an extra second with me, it was letting me know how lucky I am to be American. So honestly, I was not political. And then I looked at what was happening in our country. I looked at Hillary Clinton being one of the options for president. And then I saw this man, Donald Trump, who was the most unapologetically pro-American person I'd ever seen in my lifetime in politics, and B, who was getting up every single morning while he was polling at 1 or 2% and telling the world that he didn't care what they were saying about him. He knew he was going to be president. And that was precisely at the time what I needed in my life, was to learn from someone like that. And so my brother and I went to volunteer on the campaign. We had been to Trump Tower because we grew up in Manhattan. And that was kind of where you went when it was raining and you couldn't play in Central Park. So this was where we went. We knew all about him because he was businessman Donald Trump, not politician, obviously Donald Trump. We went to volunteer. And then I told my brother I want more. Like I said, I wanted the Olympics at one point in time. So I think that part of my personality came out again. I wrote a letter to the data director of the campaign. I begged an intern to bring it up to him. I told him how I could fix the volunteer operation across the country. He hired me the next day. I convinced him to hire my little brother as well. And as they say, the rest is history. But that is how it all started.
I love that. And, so much of what we talk about on the podcast is how to get people more involved with the process of politics, because each of us, I think for such a long time, the message was, well, you are just one person. You can't change anything. But one person can change something, and one person working with someone else and working with someone else, it's a movement. I'm very curious to know what your plans were to help with the volunteer operations and what, again, that draw was to President Trump in 2016. I was there, too. As soon as I saw him come down the escalator, that was it. I mean, there was really no one else. I was like a Scott Walker girl for about 2 weeks. And then I saw President Trump and I was like, this is the man we need at this moment. And he really did bring more young people into the movement in 2024. What were some of the things that you told him about improving volunteerism within the party? And how do you think he put that to work this time around, really, especially when it comes to young people? I mean, he was able to bring in people that I think the Democrat Party particularly never thought he would reach.
Yeah, so what I tell people now, especially having seen the other side of things, like I started as a volunteer and 8 years later I was spokesperson for the Republican Party. So I've literally seen it all on this side of the aisle. And for me, I tell people I was so lucky in 2016 because obviously I was doing the day-to-day work, but I was interacting with the people that we were all working for. So I got to sit every single day and look at these people who were working nights so that they could spend their days volunteering, making phone calls for President Trump. I've told this story before, I met a homeless person who gave me an envelope to give to the president. And we found out later it had a $20 bill in it. And she said, this is all that I could save up, but please take it and make America great again. These are the people that I was meeting. It was people from all across the state who were really just coming in. Some drove through the night almost every day just to show up to Trump Tower, sit there and make phone calls for Donald Trump. Because I had that connection to the volunteer stuff, I also went through the mail every single day. And very often I read letters to the president or then candidate Donald Trump, where people gave him their Purple Hearts, their gold stars, every award that they could possibly give him. They thanked him for his pride in America. They thanked him for being strong and standing up against political correctness. A lot of things that were coming up at that point in time that we really didn't understand how serious they were. We call now, wokeness. But back then it was really people that just thought it was okay to disrespect our country, which we're supposed to love so much. And so many people, I mean, really, when I was having a rough day at work, I would just go to the closet where we kept all this mail that was coming in and I would read it and I would realize how much he meant to all these everyday Americans, that really that's who I was working for, right? Not just him, but them. And I tell people how lucky I was because only after that experience did I understand what Donald Trump tapped into. I was extremely confident in 2016 he would win because I had that experience. There were people at the top who didn't realize how many people were coming out in droves for this man. And that's why I was so confident again in 2024. It's because Donald Trump has the love of the American people, and more importantly, the trust of the American people. So when you talk about young people, it's not because they all agree with his point of view on every single issue. It's because they trust that he's being genuine. They don't want to agree with you on everything. They just want authenticity. And every single politician that I know that came before President Trump is the opposite, polar opposite of authentic. And I think to have someone like him set this precedent that in the future, people are going to expect transparency from our politicians, expect someone to be genuine and authentic. I mean, that's what young people appreciate. That's what I was drawn towards in 2016. He has never veered away from that. He's only inspired me more. But it wasn't just policies. It was his personality. He was willing to fight no matter who was up against him. To this day, you know, he's very famous for saying never give up. That didn't mean as much before 2016, but now looking at what he's gone through, it means absolutely everything. And I think that's what inspires so many people who I know voted for him, even though they didn't agree with him on absolutely everything. So I think for me, that's what drew me in. It's him as a person being everything that I personally needed, but everything that I think our country desperately needed in 2016. And again, obviously now in 2024. And I'd say for everyone paying attention, you should meet those volunteers that go out, whether it's for Donald Trump or anyone else, and see what the American people are actually wanting to do. That's who Donald Trump listened to, and that's why he won.
Katie, you know I get up at 4:30 every single morning. So my evenings, like 5 to 9, that is my sweet spot for relaxation, getting myself ready for a great night's sleep. And I have to tell you, I am super excited to be working with Cozy Earth. I have heard about this brand before, and now I have their sheets and their pajamas. And let me tell you, I am blown away. The luxury, the quality, it is absolutely incredible. And they have made me sleep better. My problem is now I don't want to get up and get dressed in the morning because I like staying in my sheets and in my pajamas.
I love the sheets because they feel like silk. They are
do.
so luxurious, and the pillowcases, I love them. Okay, here's what else I think is really fun. I am always looking for a gift, either for my kids or my siblings, and I never know what to give. And I'm going to give these as gifts. I think it makes a really, really fun gift.
Yeah, the pajamas come in multiple sizes, even different lengths. I'm tall, so I actually have the tall length. They are perfect. They are so cozy, but they're breathable so that you get that air in the middle of the night. That's true of the sheets, too. A lot of temperature regulation going on. I think it would be a fabulous gift. Mother's Day is coming up. You have birthdays, you have summer holidays. This is absolutely perfect. You should check out the entire line from Cozy Earth, and they really do improve your nightly routine. Your friends, your family, maybe you've been thinking about trying this out, or you're looking for a great gift. Now is the time to try Cozy Earth. And when you do, use code Happy Women. You're going to save 40% off of these best-selling sheets, pajamas, and more. You are not going to regret this. These things look amazing. And the sheets come in the cutest little tote ever. You always know how hard it is to store your sheets, the fitted sheet. This tote is absolutely genius. Pajamas, absolutely amazing. And guess what? With those pajamas, the unmatched comfort of Cozy Earth, if you're not completely in love with your bedding, you can return it hassle-free. You're not going to want to, but they give you a 100-night sleep trial to test it out, plus a 10-year warranty on all the bedding products. That's incredible. They stand behind their quality of bedding. They give you a 10-year warranty and a 100-night sleep trial. You have nothing to lose, except maybe sleepless nights. So here's the deal. Sanctuary awaits at Cozy Earth. Make sure you try them out for temperature regulation, enhanced fabric, superior softness, responsible production, and durability and commitment to quality. So much so that they give you a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty on all the bedding products. Do not wait. Go right now to Cozy Earth and use the code HAPPYWOMEN for 40% off. Treat yourself, treat your family, treat your loved ones. This is a great gift, as Katie mentioned. Use code HAPPYWOMEN and save 40% off. You will love it.
So I'm curious, have you seen much change since 2016? You were saying that once it came out, you know, that you had supported Trump and worked for Trump, you got completely canceled by that community. But have you seen change, whether there or in other people around your age? Do you think in these 8 years, people have kind of come around a little bit more?
I think A, they've come around, and I think B, people are no longer afraid. And I think that's the most important part. It's very easy to bully people that are already themselves afraid, right? But when you come out unafraid, when you're not scared to put on that MAGA hat or go on TV and tell your views or even share a Facebook post, it makes people realize that what they're doing might be wrong. when you're bullying people who are agreeing with you that they, for some reason, should be scared of the vote that they cast for some reason in 2016, it makes it easier. And I think that's why I say Donald Trump was so pivotal, not just politically, but personally for so many people. He was not scared of anything that was thrown his way, whether it was another lawsuit or a mugshot or even a gunshot to the head. Nothing scared him. And I think that's what he's woken up in so many people. That's the biggest change that I've seen. Obviously, liberals are always going to be liberal, and the angry left is going to continue being the angry left. And I actually think they've gotten angrier and crazier. But because of that, the middle has actually woken up. Those on the right have woken up, and people realize that the answer to all of these problems is the opposite of fear. It's more conversations, even with people who disagree with you. It's getting out, like you said, and voting, getting involved in your local elections, running for office, volunteering, talking to people, showing your pride in this country loudly and proudly, because like you said, one person can actually change the world, because you have no idea who you're going to inspire just by, saying the pledge in the morning, just by waving that flag outside of your house, just by telling people who you voted for and that you're proud, because in America, you should be able to tell that vote out loud. It's so many things that we could all be doing. And I think that's what Donald Trump woke up in so many people.
I think so many people have come to the table, too. I mean, we have so much political violence, obviously, especially on the extremes. I mean, this week, as we sit here, the governor of Pennsylvania had Molotov cocktails thrown into his house. You have some nut who's killed his parents to try to go assassinate Donald Trump. I mean, these stories are just insanity. We have that, but I really believe the bulk of the American people, the people in the middle, and I think the polling indicates this, are tired of the just pushing to our corners and not talking. And Katie and I spent some time talking about this big summit. We said we wish we were there, Bill Maher and Kid Rock and Dana White going to see President Trump. And people on both sides of the aisle, I think there were some that were annoyed that they were having a meeting. But I absolutely love this. Now, I listened to Bill Maher, and you know what? Bill Maher is still Bill Maher. He did not get completely changed at the core by President Trump, but he saw that Trump is a human and a good human and a funny human and a person that I think his supporters have seen. How important do you think those moments are in pop culture? Because I do think they reflect what the bulk of Americans want. We just only hear from the people on the extremes and the mainstream news media that people don't like this, but I believe that people really do, and we want more of it.
No, I totally agree. I was so excited. Obviously, when I heard about the meeting, I was excited when I listened to Bill Maher after the meeting. I think for me, it's always been more conversation, right? Like I said, my parents come from the Soviet Union. They do not want me to be surrounded solely by those who agree with everything that I also believe in. That's what they escaped from. I love having friends who disagree with me, and I love the fact that we can have those debates and still know that deep down we love each other as human beings. And I think the fact that the media worked overtime to eliminate that part of the United States of America is their biggest crime that they've committed these last few years. And it obviously solely happened because of the hatred that they have for President Trump. So I was ecstatic, obviously, by Bill Maher going, but more ecstatic by him coming out and saying that Donald Trump is not the person that he thought he was. And you can disagree on every single issue, but to paint someone as a bad person or a Nazi or every other insult that I've heard come his way or my way these last 8 years, that's the opposite of who we are as Americans. And I think Bill Maher pointing out the fact that he's been lied to, and that if someone like him can be lied to, maybe most Americans can as well, who don't have the time to tune in and actually get the truth on what Donald Trump may have said or how we may have said it. I think it opened a lot of people's eyes. The fact is, no, you're not going to agree with him on everything. I probably don't agree with him on everything, but he's not the bad guy you think that he is. He wants to make America great again, just maybe in a different way than you do. And, I've also spent some time with the president. He is kind, he is genuine, he's incredibly funny. And I am always happy when someone who votes differently than we do can admit to that part, because that's what's most important. And if we continue down the path that the media wants us to go down, it's only going to be dangerous for our country, left and right. Nobody wins in the end. So I'm very hopeful now, thanks to people like Bill Maher, people like Donald Trump, who, by the way, will always have a conversation with anyone, and hopefully more people that will follow now in both of their footsteps.
So I'd love to get some of your inside scoop on what it's like to be a spokesperson for the RNC. Were you on the road constantly? How does it work? Do people just kind of trust you to go out and know what to say? Are they telling you what to say? And did you ever get in trouble for saying you shouldn't have said?
I did not get in trouble, thank God. Now that I think about it, I probably could have quite a bit. So I got brought in basically when the Republican Party changed leadership. So Ronna McDaniel was out, and Chairman Whatley came in, and Laura Trump as the co-chair, obviously. So I got to be brought in not under the old Republican Party, but the new Republican Party, and the movement that I had felt kind of a little bit a part of for 8 years at that point. And for me, I didn't feel like I was representing Republicans. I felt like I was representing Donald Trump and any American that was open truly to being a part of that movement. So it was a really big honor. Obviously, I remember when I was first asked, thinking to myself, I'm the daughter of 2 immigrants, right? My parents were Jewish refugees who came here not knowing what their future was going to be. And now their daughter is the national spokesperson for one of 2 major political parties in this country. So it was a huge honor. I got to travel quite a bit, sometimes with the president, sometimes not. We had a women's tour that we did around the country. Laura Trump and I did that with a few amazing celebrities and politicians and folks that came on board. And it was great. Like I said, what I learned in 16 is that it's not about the politicians, it's about the people. So I loved being around the country. I loved talking to everyday Americans, many of whom told me it would be their first time voting for Donald Trump and even their first time voting for a Republican. I knew we were going to win because of that spirit on the ground and how many people reminded me of the feeling that I got back in 2016. But yeah, it was a lot of meeting people, a lot of screaming on TV, a lot of getting screamed at on TV, obviously. But I was more than honored and proud to represent Donald Trump and all the millions of people behind him. And I'm sure I messed up here and there, but I hope people understood where we were all coming from, which was just the betterment of this country. And it was a huge honor, obviously, that I will always be grateful for.
The message never has to be perfect as long as it's sincere and as long as there's follow up. And boy, that's all we've gotten from President Trump is follow up and delivering. And I think that's why you're seeing his approval rating stay really in a good spot. And you're also seeing, I saw a poll today that said more people within the Republican Party are identifying as MAGA. As you said, this is the new face of the Republican Party. It's more common sense. It's about fixing problems. It's about not just being on the gravy train of taxpayers, which is what Democrats have been doing for a really long time. And I want to tap into your background, coming here again, or being the daughter of Jewish immigrants. I was pretty appalled to see Harvard University today decide that they are not going to protect Jewish students. And there's a couple of things about this story that's surprising. President Trump said, look, we're going to take away $2 billion in funding to your university if you can't say that you'll protect Jewish students and stop the anti-Semitism. Harvard has come out and said no, that they have no intention. That's surprise number one. They should be protecting all of their students, in my mind. Also surprising, though, secondarily, is the fact that the government is giving $9 billion to Harvard when they have all of these endowments. They have all of this tuition money. Like, what in the heck are we doing here? So that's part 2 of this story. But it's amazing to me how the university system just continues to say we're willing to protect some students, but not all students, Elizabeth.
Yeah, it's rough for me because, I mean, ironically, I grew up dying to go to one of these Ivy League schools. I'm still paying off a student loan for my master's, and I have now a degree from Harvard and a degree from UPenn, neither of which I want to display on my wall anymore. So that was a giant waste of time. Should have listened to my parents on that one. But, you know, for me, I actually graduated from Penn with my master's right before October 7th. So I can tell you the experience was not what it would be right now. I cannot imagine that I would have stayed if I had witnessed what happened after October 7th in UPenn, but around the country. But you know, for me, it's sad, but it's also not surprising. I've told this story before, and I don't even know if people really understood it. So when I came to my dad asking him how any of this was happening, he told me that not only is this not new, it was going on when he first came to this country. I think it's gotten bigger because we have more money flowing in from our enemies. You know, Qatar is sending money. China is very much focused on taking on the young people in this country, turning them against the United States. But it's also been happening for a very long time. So my dad told me, I believe he was at Yale Law School, and it was his first day, and the professor made a very big deal about saying we have this immigrant in our class from the Soviet Union. He's very excited, and they told him, don't worry, you're going to feel right at home here because we have our own fascist in the White House, obviously referring to Ronald Reagan. So that's the experience my dad had back at Yale 40 years ago. So I learned from him that none of this was new. I think it's obviously grown. It's a huge problem now, and it's out of control because of social media, because our adversaries have realized the power that they hold by putting money and influence into young people here. But it's not new. The only thing that is new is October 7th happened. So this was more on display than ever before, and parents are finally paying attention. So that's what I'm happy about. I cannot tell you how many parents have called me and said, where do I take my kid? Because they are not going to any of these schools. Finally, parents are seeing that they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and their kids are coming home 4 years later supporting a terrorist group. right? It is
and hating their parents,
and their country and their faith and everything else that they believed in just a few years ago. It is such a travesty, and it's in the one place that it shouldn't be happening, right? This is the one place on earth that we still have left where you should have at least diversity of thought at best. Forget, not having a support for terrorist groups. So it's really disappointing, but I'm happy it's on display. And I continue to say that because people didn't believe me when I told them how bad it was. I'm happy parents are realizing this. At the same time, I know parents are pulling funding. I know lots of donors that are pulling funding, but I am baffled that Harvard is willing to take up this fight when all they're doing is, like you said, proving that they have no interest in supporting Jewish students and only have an interest in supporting those that align with them politically. It's very, very strange. I don't know how it's going to work out for them because, like I said, this is on full display now for the entire world to see. And more people than even I expected have opened their eyes and turned against major universities in our country that people used to be in line to go to, obsessed with going to. So I think it's good that it's on display. I want them to protest more. I want them to do everything they want to do so the entire world realizes just how much we have failed, actually, in the greatest country on the face of the earth with this serious issue. And so we can save the future generation from what otherwise would have become of them.
One of the things that I think is sort of the most touching and most important successes of this very short time that Donald Trump has been in office is the number of hostages that he has been able to bring home. People who were, I don't know what, just abandoned, ignored, like we didn't care. It's sort of like the astronauts who were just left up there for 9 months. It still baffles me. But the one I think really touched me was the most recent, the Russian ballerina. I know you were commenting on that because I think too many people don't really know this story. Will you just walk us through her background, what happened to her? And then she just came home, about a week ago? I think a week ago yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. But tell us a little bit about her story.
Yeah. Hey guys, it's Jennifer Horn and Katie Gorka from the Happy Women podcast, and we are both so excited to talk to you about my PhD weightloss.com. The PhD weight loss program has worked for Katie. She is in maintenance. I am still going through my journey, but Katie, I just told you this last weekend, I threw out a stack of clothes that no longer fit. It's time for a new wardrobe. That's right. I'm excited about that. It's a good problem to have, I guess.
I was so excited because I actually had to get rid of almost my entire winter wardrobe because I went from a size 12 to a size 8. And it's funny because I kept a few of my favorite pieces and I put them on and they're like so baggy. I don't feel good in them. But yeah, it was absolutely an amazing program. And what I'm excited about, I'm now 2 years post weight loss and I've been able to maintain my weight this whole time. So it's been great.
Incredible victories. Time to feel them for yourself. Call PhD Weight Loss right now, 864-644-1900, 864-644-1900, or myphdweightloss.com. Use code Jen, myphdweightloss.com, code Jen.
So for some context, when I was younger, my parents always told me, you are never going to Russia. And I didn't understand, why. As a young child, I knew that they had escaped, but I didn't really grasp it. Only when my father told me stories later about what he went through did I understand. My dad told me, for example, about his father who passed away in a really tragic way, but only when the Soviet Union collapsed did my dad get to go back and actually found the KGB files that they had on my own family and found out how his father passed away and how he was kept from escaping and joining his family here in America. So only because of my history do I kind of understand these things. And I think it's a huge privilege. But I also understand why so many in our country don't, because we live in the greatest country on the face of the earth. And most people don't have backgrounds like my parents have, for example. So for me, I obviously resonated with the story. I watched Ksenia come home. I sat on Fox News and I cried my eyes out, which was a little embarrassing, but that's okay. But she was basically, held on a false charge, like Russia is famous for doing, by the way, for Americans. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, she also had Russian citizenship. So that's another reason that Russia is obviously very focused on things like this. They love to, make a symbol out of someone that they believe has turned against them is a great example and chosen to live in America and take American citizenship and throw away their Russian side. They create a fake charge and they hold them. And there is no system in Russia like there is here. People, again, do not understand how lucky we are to have the country that we have. So it took real negotiation tactics. It took an actual effort made by President Trump to get her back. And the fact is, you mentioned the hostages. The fact is we had an administration that not only was doing absolutely nothing, but that clearly wanted the world to know that they could not care less about the American people. So for me, I mean, watching her come home was beautiful because it meant so much to me, especially seeing her on the way back from Russia holding an American flag on the plane. It was incredible. But you're talking about the hostages. We still have hostages, by the way, held in Gaza. Never in my wildest dreams growing up could I have imagined in Israel or anywhere else that there would be Americans held hostage and we would not have a president fighting tooth and nail every day to bring them home. And that's what we lived through for, the year that Joe Biden was in office after October 7th. And it was a disaster, but it opened it opened my eyes, not just to the problem that was Joe Biden, obviously, but the problem that has taken over the Democrat Party. They will never put America first until their voters tell them that's what they want. They have completely turned away from this country. That's why so many people like me turned towards Donald Trump in 2016. It had nothing to do with the policies. It was solely his insistence on displaying an American flag at every single event and telling every single young person how lucky they are to be here. And the fact that whether it was politics about Israel, whether it was just a pride in America that they didn't want to share, I don't even know what it was. I don't know who was in charge. It obviously wasn't Joe Biden. But the fact that Americans could sit held by terrorists for a year and our government would not try to get them home, would not work tooth and nail, and instead we had a president laying on a beach, it was absolutely shameful, not just for me because I worked for Donald Trump, but just for me as an American. And I hope most people, no matter how they vote or how they align politically, were, witnessing that and realizing how much the Democrat Party has fallen in just a few years.
Yeah. I think what you're talking about, we actually spoke about in our last episode, and I think I mentioned it to you, Katie. I think the difference with Donald Trump, and I'm waking up every day so happy with what he's been doing. I mean, every single day, even when the media attention gets tough and people are freaking out about tariffs or getting yippee, as the president said, all of that stuff doesn't matter to me because I know that the president that is in office right now actually loves our country. And I'm not trying to say that Joe Biden didn't, but Joe Biden was not the person who was running things. I do question whether Obama actually loved America or celebrated American greatness. I always thought he thought America was the problem and not the solution. I think George Bush was sadly a good man, and I think he was the right leader during 9/11, but I also think that he was a tool in some respects. He had a lot of people pulling him in a lot of different directions. And so for the first time in many people's life, we're seeing someone who really loves this country operating in the best interests of America and freedom. And I think it makes a difference. And I think more and more you're going to see Jewish voters feel more and more abandoned by the Democrats. I think you're going to see young voters already bringing themselves to the table with Donald Trump. People who came here legally to our country are going to be sitting there. I mean, I think the Republican Party, if we are going more MAGA, we have the opportunity finally to expand if we start to see that Donald Trump's agenda is really driven by his love for the American people and the American way of life.
No, I completely agree. And I mean, like you just said, it's not about right or left. It's about a love for this country. Not only did the Democrats throw that aside, but at the very same time, we had a candidate emerge who embraced it every single day and inspired it in so many people. And I truly think that's why he won. I think that's what was missing from so many households, from so many hearts around this country. And it's very easy to debate policies, and I will do it all day long. And I love the fact that I disagree with so many people. But if you don't love this country, we have a much bigger problem on our hands. And that's what Donald Trump chose to take on. And I think, like you said, that's why so many people are grateful to him. And coming into this now big tent party, the MAGA movement, which is, taking on the Democrats in a way that I don't think they ever expected. And I don't know if they know how to really come back from.
So we only have a couple of minutes, but I just have to ask you this because I love your passion. I love your boldness. I love the fact that you thought, I'm just going to go volunteer for Donald Trump. And you did. And it was so great. And I love your love for the country. So I need to know, what are your plans? What are you going to do? What are you dreaming of?
So I, for a very long time, was just dreaming of what happened on November 5th. I'll be honest. Not a lot of people have worked for Donald Trump since 2016, right? There's a few amazing human beings, but a lot came on later. 2020, 2024. I watched him, win the election in 16. I watched what happened in 2020. I watched every lawsuit. I watched, the shot to the head. I've watched so many people just kind of, throw away the fact that Donald Trump was coming back and tell me it wasn't going to happen. And so I felt like for 8 years, I've been fighting that battle and just waiting for that moment because I believed in him and this country and that movement so much. So that's really what I was dreaming of, the victory on November 5th, which we had and which was incredible. I am taking a tiny break because I'm dreaming of having my own little family, which I also put aside for Donald Trump for a few years. And I'm going to dream of heading to that White House and working for President Trump because let me tell you, I've worked in politics now for a long time. He is the only person I will ever work for. So I'd like to do that while he's in there. And then we'll see. honestly, as long as more people are inspired to love this country because of anything that I'm doing, I'm getting the job done. And I think that's all my grandparents really ever wanted for me. And I'm so proud to be a tiny part of that.
All right. My final question. Getting married at Mar-a-Lago?
Yeah.
How good was that? That is one of the most beautiful places ever. So it must have been a beautiful wedding.
Not too shabby. Yes. And for those listening, just because I have to say it's so comical still that I will get, the accusation Donald Trump is an anti-Semite. I hope people understand that they didn't just give us Mar-a-Lago to get married in. They also koshered the kitchen and threw us an Orthodox Jewish wedding at Mar-a-Lago. So
oh my gosh.
It was incredible. Donald Trump obviously is not an anti-Semite. I'm grateful to him and his family for so many things. And yes, it was not a bad wedding.
I was going to say, not too terrible. There have been worse, I bet.
Probably.
Elizabeth Pipko, it is so nice to get to know you and hear your story. You have an incredible future ahead of you. I just know it. Give her a follow at Elizabeth Pipko. She's a model, former GOP spokesperson, and who knows, so maybe some announcements coming soon. But Elizabeth, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate you.
Thank you both so much.
All right. And don't forget to get Katie's book. It's called Next Gen Marxism, available right now. And you can check out her website as well, katiegorka.org. You can find her on Facebook. Search out Catherine Gorka, or on X, Gorka Katie. And you can find me on social media too, at Jennifer Horn Radio on Instagram and on Facebook, and at Jennifer Horn on X and on Truth Social. And thank you so much for those 5-star reviews and sharing Happy Women with your friends. We appreciate each and every one of you.